The views and opinions expressed on this program are those of the producers and the individuals appearing on this program and do not necessarily reflect the views and opinions of the staff of the Sun Prairie Media Center, its members or underwriters, the board members of the Media Center Commission, Charter Communications, TDS Telecom, or the staff and elected officials of the City of Sun Prairie.
Hello and welcome to Real Reviews. My name is Jamison Rabbit, and the man seated next to me, well, he's not here this week. Unfortunately, my co-host Mike Roth is a little under the weather. He got bit by a radioactive pachyderm at some point, and he is not feeling well right now, so you are stuck with just me. We wish Mike a speedy recovery for next week's show, but the show must go on, so I have a few movies that I'm going to be talking about this week. And I'm going to start us off with our streaming spotlight. From Netflix, we have a film from director John Lee Hancock. It is a film called The Highwaymen, starring Kevin Costner as Frank Hamer and Woody Harrelson as Manny Galt. It is the true story of the peace officers who were responsible for taking down the criminals Bonnie and Clyde. These gentlemen were retired Texas Rangers who were seemingly past their prime at this point when Bonnie and Clyde were on their reign of terror throughout the Midwest. And they were called on to do what the newly founded FBI and the local police couldn't do, and that was to stop Bonnie and Clyde, who, if you don't know, had been robbing banks and killing cops throughout the Midwest at this point. Frank Hamer and Manny Galt, you can tell they've been together in their past. They've been through some times when they were in their active duty as Texas Rangers. But they, like I said, they were brought out of retirement by the new governor, Governor Ferguson, in Texas, played by Kathy Bates. And what's interesting is, at this time period, everything is changing. When these guys are going after Bonnie and Clyde, everything seems to be changing in history. The FBI has just been formed by J. Edgar Hoover, and these guys are in a whole new world of technology and the type of outlaw that they're after, and the technology and the firepower that these outlaws have. Suddenly they're going up against not just some cattle rustlers with six shooters, but people with Tommy guns. Also interesting was, at this time, Hamer and Galt, in their prime, they were on horseback trying to track down outlaws, and here they are dealing with the automobile as well as all of the other machinery out there. Bonnie and Clyde were the type of outlaw heroes, and there were several of them at this time period. Bonnie and Clyde, Machine Gun Kelly, Dillinger, all these guys who were outgunning the cops, crisscrossing the country, almost rock star celebrities who robbed from the hated banks during this Depression era, and the people kind of celebrated these and kind of protected them. Hamer and Galt weren't out there for celebrity or notoriety. They were old school, putting their lives on the line to try and take down these criminals. And this movie is interesting in that it focuses on the peace officers, and you don't really see Bonnie and Clyde until the end of the movie. You see kind of brief images of them, but they are definitely not the focus of the movie. The focus is on the characters portrayed by Costner and Harrelson. And these guys were great, out there getting by on their wits and their guts. Great performances from both of them. It's kind of, because of Kevin Costner, it does remind me quite a bit of The Untouchables, in which he played Elliot Ness going after Al Capone. It's kind of The Untouchables mixed with a little bit of the Wild West. And it's interesting. It's good, especially for a Netflix original film. I enjoyed it. There were some of the secondary performances in here were just kind of okay, and it kind of dragged down a little bit in the middle. But overall, I really enjoyed The Highwaymen for what it was. I give it 3 out of 5 stars, kind of hedging towards 3.5 stars. Mike had given me his score for this movie. He gave it a 3.5 stars. He seemed to really enjoy this as well. So if this sounds interesting to you, it is available streaming on Netflix for you right now. Now, getting on to what we have on the marquee this week, there's really one big movie that we had this week. It is the new Disney film, Dumbo, the live-action adaptation, continuing in the line of these Disney live-action adaptations of their animated classics. Dumbo, originally in 1941, was the original version. This one, we have director Tim Burton working with Disney, and he brings a very familiar cast with him. Danny DeVito is in here as Max Medici. Max is the owner of a down-on-its-luck traveling circus who is desperate for a new feature attraction. This is right after World War I. He is barely getting by, kind of on smoke and mirrors. He doesn't have something that's really going to draw people to come out to his struggling little circus. We also have Colin Farrell as a man named Holt Farrier, who used to be the star attraction of this circus as a horseman of some sort. He did horse tricks. He left for the war, came back, and had lost one arm. So doing his horse tricks wasn't going to work anymore, unfortunately. So he is looking for his place within the circus. His children are also still there. His wife passed away while he was gone. And so the children are missing their mother, which is a very familiar theme in Disney films. And they find a kinship in the new animal that is brought into the circus. Max Medici has purchased this pregnant elephant, Jumbo, who gives birth to a baby that's supposed to be the savior of the circus, and it turns out to be a freak. Dumbo has long ears, just looks different in a time when different wasn't necessarily what they were looking for. And as I said, his Colin Farrell, Holt Farrier's children kind of find a kinship with this little animal that everyone else is kind of shocked by. And this shy, it's interesting, this kind of, the way they portray Dumbo as this shy, freakish character, and within this Tim Burton universe really reminded me a lot of Edward Scissorhands, one of Tim Burton's early films. Reminded me a lot of Edward Scissorhands, a character that doesn't speak, is really shy, is a freak, and people start to learn from, as he starts to learn from himself. You also have kind of reminiscent of earlier Burton films, probably because of the Danny DeVito connection as a circus ringmaster. It also felt a lot like Big Fish, another early Burton film. But anyways, as we're going along, Dumbo, through kind of an accident, an experiment that young Millie Farrier, played by Nico Parker, gets him to, he has this feather, kind of sucks this feather up into his snout and sneezes and takes off. The big ears act as a sail. We all know the Dumbo story. Dumbo starts to fly, and everyone is kind of overcome by this new attraction. Enter local millionaire V.A. Vanderveer, played by Michael Keaton. V.A. Vanderveer sees something in this elephant attraction, and he wants to exploit it for his gain. And he brings in Max and Dumbo and the circus troupe to his huge, basically Disneyland-esque theme park, and he wants Dumbo to be to star as a feature attraction with his lady friend Colette, who is played by Eva Green. And Michael Keaton is great in this role as kind of an over-the-top, deceitful bad guy, kind of smarmy bad. You know that he's not on the up and up, and he plays it perfectly. It's really, really a great performance. And there's a lot going on in here. I mean, they really make a pull for your heartstrings when they separate Dumbo from his mother. That was a moment that I saw some people in the theater really get affected by. So this movie it's not a straightforward adaptation of the original film. First off, notably, the animals don't talk. So one of the beloved characters from the 41 version of Dumbo is Timothy the mouse, who is kind of Dumbo's friend. There's no Timothy in this movie. There's some mice. They don't speak, and they're only on screen for a couple of minutes. And so it is the humans that have to do all the talking. So it's a film that's more focused on the human side than on the Dumbo side, which is kind of interesting. And that plays good and bad, because I think there's some really fun performances. Danny DeVito is really good. Michael Keaton, I say, was good. Nico Parker, who plays the daughter, she is actually actress Thandie Newton's daughter, and she was really tremendous in this. I really liked her quite a bit. Unfortunately, this movie, like a lot of these Disney films, like The Jungle Book before it, and like Lion King coming soon, kind of live and die by the CGI. And I thought that the CGI in this film was a little hit and miss. It didn't always work. The scenes with Dumbo flying didn't always look smooth. They didn't look. They had choppy moments within them. Also interesting is you take a children's film, and this version of it, the runtime is twice as long as the original Dumbo, which I think is kind of a big ask for young children to sit through. This bit of a runtime. I know my daughter was excited to see this. She made about 2/3 of the way through it and fell asleep. It was a longer film, and you don't have the talking animals. It seemed like some interesting choices to me, some very deliberate choices. And when you deal with Tim Burton as a filmmaker, he's always felt to me obviously he has his own style, and his style is, you can tell it's a Tim Burton film very quickly on. All of his films feel that way. And I was surprised to see that Disney didn't rein that in a little bit. So this felt like a lot, this was a lot of Burton and Elfman. And a lot of it borrowed too heavily, I think, on their previous work. I mentioned a couple of them. It borrowed heavily from Edward Scissorhands and Big Fish and other films that they've done together. It didn't feel like it landed right where it should be. It didn't feel like complete. And I don't know. It was okay. I thought there was some good performances, but I was a little bit let down by this. I was kind of hoping for a little more and did not get it, unfortunately. So ultimately, Dumbo, I gave 3 stars. There's enjoyable bits to it, but when you talk about the live action adaptations of these Disney films, I think it's kind of on the lower end. It's definitely in the Pete's Dragon territory as opposed to the Jungle Book or Beauty and the Beast or any of those. And we have Aladdin and Lion King coming out this year, which both look like they could be a lot of fun. So Mike actually really did not care for this. This Dumbo was on his top 10 most anticipated movies list at the beginning of the year, and unfortunately, Mike gave it 2 stars. So take that for what you will, but he was a bit let down by Dumbo. And I can understand that, especially when you're anticipating something to be great and it doesn't deliver on great, it just delivers on okay. Now let's move backwards as we're talking about all of these films. We have a movie throwback this week that kind of seemed really fitting for the tie-in to what we're dealing with Tim Burton, with Michael Keaton, with Danny DeVito, with perhaps people who are different freaks that are born into the world and treated differently. It all comes together with 1992's Batman Returns. This is the second film in this version of the Batman universe. Tim Burton returns with Michael Keaton as his star Batman after the huge hit of Batman, 1989's Batman. This one, we have Michael Keaton back as Bruce Wayne and Batman. It opens with a deformed baby that is born in Gotham and rejected by its parents, much like Dumbo. It opens up with that. And that baby is revealed to have grown up into a grotesque man that we know as the Penguin, played by Danny DeVito. Meanwhile, this billionaire energy magnate, Max Schrank, who is played beautifully by Christopher Walken, he outwardly appears to be like this philanthropic millionaire, kind of like a Bruce Wayne type who just wants to give back to the city. He seems very humble in his outward appearance, but he has a plan, and his plan outwardly is to build a new power plant for Gotham. But secretively, his plan is to actually use his power plant to suck power out of Gotham. A really nefarious plan, and then I guess cause a shortage, and then he will have the power. Usual bad guy stuff. Going to sell power back to the city, bring this city to its knees. Selena Kyle, played by Michelle Pfeiffer, is his assistant, and she stumbles across this nefarious plan. And Max Schrank can't have that, and so he throws her out of a window, killing her seemingly. But as she lies there dying on the pavement, she is resuscitated by some cats. She gains the power of a kitty cat and becomes Catwoman, of course. And so the Penguin and Max Schrank team up in this film to take down Batman. Max comes up with this plan to make the Penguin seem like a hero to the city. He saves a billionaire's baby, and he becomes a big hero. And both of them are kind of setting each other up as patsies. Meanwhile, you have Catwoman, who is kind of an in-between hero, villain. She's kind of playing by her own rules, kind of her own free agent. And it's interesting in this film, this Batman movie, that you have both the hero in Batman and the villain in the Penguin are both orphans, kind of two sides of the same coin, much like our guy Dumbo. And what's also odd on rewatch of this film is, I hadn't watched this movie in a number of years, is that the Batman is kind of a secondary character within his own movie. The large percentage of this movie is focused on Catwoman, on the Penguin, and Batman gets about as much screen time as Max Schrank through a large chunk of this movie. His story doesn't really progress a ton from what we learned about him in the first film. It really does focus on the feel of Gotham, the Tim Burton feel of Gotham, where everything is at night. The sun never shines in Gotham. And there's some really great moments in here. Some great moments between Catwoman and Batman. I think those are the best parts of this movie. I really love Christopher Walken in this film. I forgot how much I enjoyed him in this. I think he's a ton of fun. He's over the top. He's maniacal. There's a lot, though, in this movie that I don't care for on rewatch. And unfortunately, the biggest thing is the Penguin. I mean, the Penguin is kind of the star. These Batman movies live and die on their villains, in my opinion, and that's what made the first one so great, and that's what made the Christopher Nolan films, especially the Dark Knight, is that villain is so great with Heath Ledger, and I don't like the design of the Penguin. It feels like you had the perfect actor to play the Penguin in Danny DeVito, and instead it was full on Tim Burton, where he had to make him really grotesque, where he's born as like half penguin. Like, he's eating raw fish, he's got flippers. Like, instead of just being a man, he's somehow part penguin, and the sculpt of him, and just kind of really grotesque. And I think that was a missed opportunity. I think that's a complaint from a lot of people, is that this Batman movie really got dark and weird and kind of gross. And I think that unfortunately still holds up. And I think that that's what led to the studio going to Joel Schumacher for the next movie, and suddenly Gotham went from being dark and gothic to everything's a glow light rave with Batman Forever. We got a new Batman with that one, but I love Michael Keaton in this. I think Michelle Pfeiffer is the quintessential Catwoman. We've seen different versions of this Catwoman. I think she still holds up. She's terrific in this. As I said, Christopher Walken's fun, and so Batman Returns. In that lineage of those first four Batman movies, I think it's third for me. Guilty pleasure, I like Batman and Robin quite a bit. I think it's awful, but its campiness is really reminiscent of the 1966 Batman for me. Like, it's over the top. Schwarzenegger as Mr. Freeze is over the top, and I think we've talked about that in the past. But yeah, Batman Returns it's got good moments, but I think it emphasizes that I'm not a big Tim Burton guy. I think that's what it comes down to. I'm curious what Mike thought about it, because I think Mike really enjoys Tim Burton. Maybe next week we'll have to ask him about that. All right, let's take a look ahead at films that are going to be coming out the weekend of April 12th. Talk about what we have coming soon. That weekend, we have the new superhero movie, the anti-hero movie. Hellboy is out. This is a remake. We had the first two Hellboys we had the first one from Guillermo del Toro. with Ron Perlman under the makeup as Hellboy. We are rebooting it now with, now I'm drawing a blank on his name. He played the sheriff in Stranger Things. Don't know why I do this. But anyways, he is under the makeup as Hellboy. We also have Little, which is a body swap movie. Last week we were talking about Big and other body swap adventures. Little is very similar to that. And then we have the new animated movie for the kids, Missing Link, about the missing link. And he's going to find another friend. He's the Bigfoot. He's going to find his Yeti or Abominable Snowman friends on the other side of the world. Looks cute enough. Looks like a decent animated film when we don't have any animated films out in theaters that I can think of right now. But we do have, with Hellboy, this will be 3 out of the last 4 weeks. 3 out of the last 4 weeks with a superhero movie with Captain Marvel, Shazam, and then Hellboy. So those are the movies that are coming out the weekend of April 12th. Next week we got a lot of things going on. First off, next week we are going to be celebrating our 5-year anniversary. 5 years ago, we started this show. It was an interesting start. I think you can find our first episodes on sunprairiemediacenter.com, perhaps. As you can guess, it was a little rough. We didn't have this cool set. We were pretty shy talking. But next week we're celebrating our 5-year anniversary. And what better way to celebrate than by pairing up with our sponsor, the Palace Cinema, Marcus Theaters here in Sun Prairie. First off, we really appreciate your sponsorship and what you've done for us over the years. And they are welcoming us in again to do a show right there from the theater, which is always exciting. It's always a lot of fun to get to take this show on the road. And so for our 5-year anniversary, we are going to be doing it from the Palace Friday, April 12th in the morning. If you want to come out and say hi and get a cameo on the show, maybe do a walk behind, hold up a sign saying, Mike looks like George Lucas. You can, Friday, April 12th, but we're going to be there celebrating our 5-year anniversary. That's going to be a lot of fun. We really appreciate the Palace for doing all of that. We also have, coming up next week, we have a few movies that we're going to be talking about. Next week we have, as I mentioned, Shazam. We actually reviewed it last week, but I think we'll talk about it a little bit more in depth next week since it'll actually be out in theaters and we can kind of get into it a little bit more than we did on our very spoiler-free review last week or 2 weeks ago. So Shazam will be out. We also have Best of Enemies, which is a film that I'm really looking forward to, starring Taraji P. Henson and Sam Rockwell, the true story about integrating schools in the South during the Civil Rights movement. Looks really interesting to me. 2 great actors, 2 of my favorite actors working today with Sam Rockwell and Taraji P. Henson. That's very interesting. And then we have Pet Sematary, the newest version of the Stephen King film based off of one of his classic books. It's odd. I didn't notice it, but when I started thinking about it, it feels like the Stephen King movies are kind of getting the same treatment that the Disney films are doing with their animated movies, where they're taking their animated films and remaking them as live action. It feels like the Stephen King films are slowly getting this treatment of being remade. We had Carrie a few years ago. Of course, we had It, which is part 2 is coming out later this year. I believe they're working on a Cujo remake, and then Pet Sematary remake, which looks interesting to me. And I think that's cool because I think that the strength of Stephen King is obviously in his writing. And I don't think that a lot of his films have been great, unfortunately. I think that a lot of the films, I think his books are tough to transfer to film. And so I think that taking the second crack at it, or for some a third crack at translating those books onto film is cool because it introduces a new generation to these. So I'm hopeful that Pet Sematary is good. We also have our streaming spotlight next week. It's going to be fun. It is a film that's going to be coming onto Netflix. Will be on Netflix probably by the time you see this, called Unicorn Store. It is the directorial debut of Brie Larson, Captain Marvel herself, her directorial debut. And it is also starring her and her Captain Marvel co-star, Samuel L. Jackson. So that is coming out on Netflix. It's a film that she made in 2017. Netflix just acquired and decided to release here in 2019. Kind of an interesting story that we'll talk about more next week as we're reviewing it. But if you want to watch that to get ahead of it along with us, that will be on Netflix. Again, it's called Unicorn Store. We also have, coming up, we have reviews of films that will be shown at the Wisconsin Film Festival as I'm talking. The Wisconsin Film Festival is underway, and as every year, I will have a bunch of fun reviews of films that maybe aren't coming out into theaters everywhere, but that are pretty interesting. And I feel like every year when we do our end of the year top 10 list, that there's a couple of films that we're seeing at the Film Fest that make that top 10 list. So that's always interesting. Hopefully we can score some good movies out of that. Again, I want to thank Marcus Theaters. If you want to find more from our show, you can find us online on Facebook or on Twitter. Just search for Real Reviews TV. Any of these links will get you there. We'd love your support. If you could share our program or share our pages with anyone that you know, we would appreciate that. We also put our show up on YouTube, Real Reviews, KSUN. That's our station, K-Sun. You want to watch us there. If it's easier for you to watch us on perhaps on your TV. If you have a Roku or an Apple TV device, you can also download our channel, K-Sun. That's all it is, KSUN. You go on there. It has all of our programming on there as well as this program in beautiful HD TV. Yeah, you can find us on all of these things. But what we would love is if you could just share us with your friends, maybe get a little more exposure, tell somebody, hey, check this show out. Maybe don't share this one. You know, it's weird without Mike here. It's a very strange experience not having my good friend Mike. So before I leave you, I want to give a shout out to Mike. Hope you're feeling better, buddy. Hope you're back next week for our big anniversary show. That would be really weird not to have you around. So hopefully everything gets cleared up and you are back with your maniacal laugh sitting next to me. Otherwise, I'm going to have to find, I guess, a random person to fill in for you this week or next week. But anyways, all right, I'm going to get us out of here. Next week, as I said, we're going to be talking about Shazam, Best of Enemies, Pet Sematary, and Unicorn Store. But until we meet again, I'm Jamison. Have a good one.